Okay. Thanks, Carrie. Yeah, and like the case-based TCI proposal, we really want to encourage these courses. I think the courses that compete best are courses that will identify and deal with a difficult environmental topic. Now that has a different meaning for different disciplines, arts and design versus law versus policy or public health. All of those have, you know, that environmental problem or topic plays out differently. But that's the main reason for doing this, right? We want a field-based component to mean something, not just a nice place to go and work, but really focus on a local problem, ideally that has impacts more broadly, but where, you know, Tip O'Neill, all politics is local, right? So you start with your problems that you can identify locally, and as we saw in this morning's research presentations, these things we're working on locally generally resonate at larger scales. So again, both of our TCI proposals are relying heavily on our interactions with the Center for Research on Learning and Teaching. Maybe Mary, I'm happy to hand off to you. Like I think I've already said, we view this five-year award as an opportunity for us to learn and improve, and we certainly want to set our sights on extending beyond 5 years. So we view this as 5 years to invent and develop and realize a program, and the challenge beyond that, of course, is to sustain it with funding from some source. But you can't sustain something that isn't worth sustaining. So we really want to build something, do this experiment, identify a strength and have an impact. And then frankly, I'm just, you know, Pollyannish about this, funding will come. So Mary, would you like to give us your perspective on CRLT? Been around a long time, been a very positive force at the university.
What do you think would be helpful for this group to know about the class? Is it the 21st century initiative or the center?
The center and how you interact with existing third century awards, how you envision interacting with the two awards, and also anybody else who has questions, for either me or Carrie or Mary or Harry.
I have an early question.
Sure.
So I understand sort of what a course would mean on campus and at the biostation through your grant, but I don't fully understand what course mechanism or structure would operate if somebody proposed a case study. So would those students be enrolled in research credit for the term? You see what I mean?
I see what you mean.
Would that be a senior thesis, but they didn't get course credit? Would it be a summer program?
Yeah, so actually there are 4 cases right now. And one of the first cases to go up, there was two of the first cases. There was an Ethiopia case and a Wolf case. And the Ethiopia case was Arun, the other head of this project. It was his students who each of the students were in groups of like 3 or 4, and they proposed a case that they were going to learn about that semester. And so then he chose one that he thought was really well done, and that was the Ethiopia case. And then they continued their work, and then they were paid. And then they created this Ethiopia case that's now being taught in Rebecca's class in Highland.
So they got a salary for their efforts.
Yes, so they coursework first, and then what they did extra on top of that. And that's what. So the funding, the goal of the funding, which Rebecca didn't really cover as much, but the goal is that the professor and the researcher don't have to do a ton of work for this project, but rather it's like this, it falls back more on the students, and the researcher is overseeing. So a lot of our cases are driven by student interest, and then the researcher or the professor is helping them along and making sure that they're doing all the case, like all the components of the case are what is the project.
But the idea would then be that there is a class on campus that would directly relate
Right
to
now,
the
they're embedded in classes.
I see.
Potential idea of also extending College of Engineering as well. But yes, that's
But sometimes a case might be on a topic for which there was not an obvious class to prepare them.
Well, I think she would be open to hearing about new structures.
I see.
And there are cases that aren't going on through classes. For instance, there are 2 students right now working on classes Dr. Victoria Arvai is overseeing a case on fracking, and that's run by a student who works with the MSc, and it's not for class, he's doing this for his thesis, and then as well as working with our team. And there's another case on Michigan cherries that's being put out by Dr. Paige Fisher, and that's also a master's thesis for another student. So it doesn't necessarily have to be for a class, but there are two people working for a thesis. There are all different ways that these cases get built up to be a part of a case study that is used in a classroom.
Eric, I have a question. So these cases that are existing are pre-award case studies, right? This is a question. I'm making it as a statement, but it's a question. This is what Arun is interested in. So he's already started doing case studies before the Third Century Award, or is he using?
I thought the Wolf study was done.
Yeah, so those two studies were done with his class from this fall, I'm pretty sure. And they were continued once the grant was received. Then they were continued and made into the cases. But his students were making cases, and there were more of them that weren't chosen. And then this Ethiopia case was really well done, so we chose to continue with that one when the grant came in. And that was the first case study that's on the site now being piloted in Rebecca's class.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand, because I'm just learning this too, PJ. So PJ's at the University of Chicago. He teaches field evolution and natural history at the station. Conceivably could identify a case that his class could work on. He could get extra resources to work with you all and us to bring that case forward and develop the products. That could be used at Chicago or anywhere else in the country.
Yes, I'm not exactly sure on the logistics of how it's sold and used, but that is the goal, that it's not only to be used here at the university, that it would be a wider thing. And that's why the international competition that she kind of touched on a little bit comes in later too. So this isn't a goal for only Michigan to use, it's for large usage across the country.
I guess I would be more interested in proposing a case that UMBS students would do and figure out how to coordinate classes or activities and then direct them up in the summer.
Can you imagine coordination where your students and Michigan students work together? That would be an interesting collaboration.
Well, that would be too, but like most non-UMBS faculty that come to the station, I'm lucky to get one or two undergraduates up to the station.
From Chicago.
From Chicago, unlike graduate students. Most non-UMBS campuses only send up at the most one each year. So I wasn't necessarily thinking of U Chicago. I was thinking of several ideas for case studies. It's just a matter of figuring out the students and maybe introduce the students during my summer course, and then they do that the next year as a senior thesis. I mean, there are lots of potential mechanisms, so to speak.
Yeah, and a lot of these students in Rebecca's class didn't work, none of them worked on this case, but it's being taught to them now. So the goal isn't that each person, the person who works on the case is the only one learning from it, that she's using it in a class now, where a lot of these students aren't even programming the environment students or are going to biostation. It's like Cross's anthropology class, so there are a lot of anthropology majors in there that have nothing to do with environmental science necessarily.
But there are some cases, I don't mean to take up any time here, so forgive me, but there are some case studies that I could easily see a course that they're doing as a class project to include a whole bunch of different questions, and then see if the students were interested in continuing it through this mechanism.
I think you were asking about the overlap. That's a great example of potential overlap.
I have a couple questions. So I think Newt sent around a copy of the UMBS TCI proposal, or at least some sort of.
The what TCI?
The one that UMBS,
okay.
And so it seems like the SNRE also has links that can describe the project a little bit more, but do I understand correctly, there's a distance learning component to this?
Distance learning.
Meaning going somewhere else.
That there needs to be audio and video, and that can be available for download?
Yes. So one of the components, the edge notes that she was talking about that are on the side of the case, those could be video clips, audio, links to other news stories, but then the podcast is going to be a part of every case, and so the ones that are made is usually they have the decision maker, and they are recording a conversation between the decision maker and the students who put the case together, and so they're discussing not as a supplement to a complement to the case text. So it's extra information for the students to hear more about the case, and as well as covering some of the stuff that's covered in the case text itself.
So I was hearing something different. You asked one is accessible. Sorry, for
Yes.
distance learning.
Yes, and
It sounds like you're creating electronic cases that might be usable by people in various.
Yes, that's the goal. So they're not set on like how it's going to be sold or who can access certain cases right now. So I'm not sure on that. That would be a question to follow up with Rebecca, and I'm not even sure she would have the answer right now. But the goal is that it wouldn't just be used at Michigan. It would be used, if people could access it from all over the place. I'm just not sure if there would be, you had to buy rights to it or if it was going to be accessible to everyone.
thinking out loud, this way of sort of promoting more overlap and providing opportunities for UMBS faculty who are not U of M, if part of this is to construct some sort of a module that is available online that can be a shared communication between largely U of M students during the summer and possibly some connection with other students in different classes during the academic year, thinking out loud. But that, another thing might be able to field test some of these ideas in UMBS classrooms. So they might have the opportunity to be felt down here by a U of M faculty member, and then they can be field tested during the summer also through non-U of M faculty and U of M classes. I'm thinking of some of these big ones. I'm thinking of evolution. I'm thinking of ecology. That would be ideal places to run some of these things.
I would imagine we're only limited by our creativity, and I don't mean to be, high in the sky in that, but the way Rebecca described it, or the way I interpreted what Rebecca said was, she talked about the exciting product at the end of this video and that lots of people are using. But the way she described the basis of the grant was to provide experiential learning experiences for the students involved, right? So you could have communities where that was the primary goal, irrespective of whether they produced a product that was then incorporated into the classes. Or the experiential learning could be the production of that product as a teacher. That's what I mean. It's kind of open-ended. Both exercises are valuable and important. The way she described it, it did not seem like it was limited to one or the other or both. Right? Ideally, there is a product, but if the goal is to provide experiential teaching opportunities for students that change their lives and careers, then it doesn't matter if there's a video at the end of it.
Could I feed in on that? Because I'm learning about this new. By the way, I'd like to introduce Matthew. Matt Kaplan, Center for Research on Learning and Teaching Director. Works with Mary closely. So thanks for coming, Matt. When we talk, why don't we all just say our names so the newest person that we can know who we are. I think, can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of the goals is to produce a product that's a new kind of product. So it's not simply, which is important, to have this engaged experience, but it's also to produce something that lives beyond that experience. That's my understanding. And you might think of it, all of us, our goal is to teach and do research, and we want to publish, right? So this product is, you could think of it as a publication, as a real tangible product that conveys information from what you've been doing. Am I stating that correctly? And so I would think of it not only in terms of the class structure, which is a good way to think about it if you're coming, especially from a non-U of M institution like Chicago, but if you're a researcher, can I usurp your research project and say,
You can have it.
Thank you. Oh, your grant, your NSF grant's done with now.
That's
so
right.
That's my problem.
I'm selling it.
So Claudia has been doing this incredibly interesting research on an endangered species, Pitcher's thistle, that lives, correct me if I'm wrong, in fragile dune areas. It's been used as a reason to stop development in coastal areas. And she's found out some really interesting things about other threats to this plant species.
Yes.
I'll let her briefly tell you. But the thing is, surprise, surprise, something's happened. Now you haven't taught a course at the station since I've been there.
No,
But you've been bringing.
I can put a date on it.
Yeah.
It was since 2000.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I came over, and Carrie came over. But the point is, so you have this really interesting project. It's funded by NSF for 10 years, right?
It was, yeah.
And big surprise is she's been coming up with graduate students. She'd maybe like to write another NSF proposal if she could think of a way to really have a broader impact. That's one of the criteria at NSF now, right? Would be, well, I'm onto this interesting line of research. It's going in a surprise area. It deals with an interesting habitat, resource management issues, policy contentious issues, and this is a case. I would like to bring this project into my case and work with me and my graduate students to develop modules that could be used to demonstrate how this case worked and to convey lessons learned and maybe get feedback. So, I mean, I may be going way out of my area, but this is how I understand that this particular project might actually work constructively with a research team as well as a class team.
Yeah, and I think that, just to clear, I'm not sure if this is just kind of a vibe that I was getting, but it's not necessarily that the case that you make has to be used for your classroom necessarily. So kind of like a researcher doing a case, it could be used for a class that you don't know about, at another university and used to teach their class. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're making a case just to teach in your own classroom. That's not the criteria that it has to go through. It is something that the research that's interesting, that shows like there are a lot of stakeholders in an issue like the ones that we've been often covering now. So things like one of the earlier presentations that we discussed quickly was the one about the dam and what's going to happen if they remove this dam. And so that would be a case like who decides to remove the dam, who's going to be affected if the dam is removed, and just getting these full picture issues that are presented in a way that's different from the way academic papers are often presented late in like the past century almost.
Yeah.
Well, let me take one step beyond that towards this idea of a deliverable or a value-added opportunity beyond just funding support or increasing our pedagogy. One is most of us don't know what we're doing in the classroom. I come from a very committed teaching institution historically that trains more teachers than any other school in the state of North Carolina, except when we are paralyzed when we get to things like assessment. And I've collaborated with some people who work on universal designs for learning from nonprofits and from within our College of Education. And I am like so out of my wheelhouse. So I think one thing that might be useful is, can your center even just provide a little bit of consultation or a day workshop to talk to faculty about, and this is assessment, because that's how my understanding of the literature is. It's not just publishing, here's a learning opportunity, it's here's the effectiveness of this learning opportunity.
So I think for the project as a whole, we're collaborating with Rebecca on assessment of the whole initiative, trying to think about vetting that. At this point, I don't think there's the idea of working with faculty. With 150 cases, I think that would be difficult for us to think about that still. But we can talk more about Rebecca if there's some model or some structure that might be useful.
Well, it sounds like the assessment's already taken care of.
Well, I hope so. Yeah. So there is assessment going on, and hopefully it doesn't have to be a burden to the faculty. So what we're working on with Rebecca now is really getting a lot of formative feedback so that there's a good model for the cases, but then when they go on learn more, we have something really solid. And then as she mentioned, she's really thinking about a rigorous assessment by design.
Just to add that I do believe, I don't know if this is the same meeting, I haven't been in these meetings here, but with Michelle was in, she was telling them that Rebecca and the team, that they should come up with competencies of what people are trying to get out of these classes. And so I think that by finding out what people should be, what students should be getting out of these classes, that would be sort of the breakdown of the requirement of if your case is chosen, these are some things you should keep in mind to include in the case teaching methods.
So ideally what we'll have by the end of the term is a really good model and template for people like you to say, here's what our initial assessment makes for a productive case. Is that the kind of thing that you
Yeah. And even my experience has been even just the jargon, because every discipline has its own jargon, and just understanding things like competencies. A lot of faculty, our eyes start to glaze over at that point. Like, what are these general competencies? Gee, what are those?
I'm incompetent about those words.
Do we have any? Yeah. And how do we share them?
Sure. So our main website is CRLT. /. And then we
So the third century, the non-UMBS grant is through your organization or SNRE or both?
So the third century initiative is funded by the Provost Office. I don't know how much background there was in the third century.
Yeah, introduction. Thank you.
But you have facing licensing, so it's the third century.
Yeah. But that grant comes to one unit or multiple units? I mean, your grant came to UMBS. Right?
Our grant came to UMBS. It was
Through LSNA or in
well, it
conjunction?
actually comes from the provost, but LSNA cost shared. So LSNA kicked in half, and the provost award was 1.5, so it's 2 mil.
Yeah.
I think Rebecca in her rooms, we'll call that the case-based TCF, third century initiative, was about the same level for 5 years. I want to just update Matt on something, because Matt hasn't been to any of these meetings. Have you been to the station?
I haven't, no.
So we have, I would say 80% of the people who teach at the UM Biological Station are non-UM faculty. So they're from Chicago, from East Carolina University, from just about
University of Wisconsin.
Bowling Green State, Harvard, everywhere. So they're a little bit, well, they're not U of M people, but they're teaching U of M courses. And in fact, CRLT has divided. I think 2 meetings ago we had someone here, or maybe that was from the upper level writing. But anyway, so it's a little bit of a different model than what you all are used to working with. But it's a university unit, and they're teaching U of M courses. So I think CRLT's general resources are available to you. So yeah. So I just wanted to give that background. So I think we're talking here about courses, and we're talking about potential research projects. One thing I thought would be a great case-based study is this discovery you made about an organism that was brought in to take care of an invasive organism that's affecting pitcher species.
Jump host, yeah.
Yeah.
Non-target impacts.
Yeah, non-targeted.
And the other thing is that there's a relative that is used to
Why don't you give us all the background on that? Because you're talking with me and I know about it.
All right, in addition, pitcher thistle is not only a sort of indicator of critical doomed habitat, but a biocontrol insect weevil used to control weedy thistles out west has dispersed, migrated into the upper Great Lakes, and is now feeding on pitcher's thistle on its seeds, which is the critical for reproduction. And there's also related weevils that are being actively distributed in nearby systems for control of a weedy plant called spotted knapweed. And so the potential for more non-target impacts from these biological control agents, both happenstance and actively distributed, continues to increase. The critical argument is that these biocontrol agents really don't work. That stay tuned for that if bioscience is good for us. And the second argument is that beekeepers are very fond of spotted knapweed, even though it is a vicious weed, because it presents an important floral resource at the end of the summer when very little else is available. So yeah, this is a hotbed.
So I could see this as a case-based study that's not involved with a course, but still has a huge teaching component on a large scale.
And just to add to that, so I don't know enough about this case personally to speak to, but I know that there has been some discussion with someone who used to be higher up in USAID about how aid is given out and stuff. So that person isn't even a professor necessarily, and that's a case that could be used to teach things like everyone teaches some nonprofit management and stuff like that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a professor that's doing these or somebody who's teaching a class. But that USAID person is not a teacher or professor from my knowledge. So I think that definitely a research case could easily become a case.
And, there are students involved. So I have a question for Anne Mary. So correct me if I'm wrong. I understand, I think, about what the RLT does. A lot of cool things on campus, actually. But this is not a traditional course. Claudia might be working with undergraduate and graduate researchers who may or may not be taking credit, but she's producing a learning product. How do we interact with CRLT on something like that? Can CRLT help us evaluate the impact of the process she's going through to try to create a case, let's say? She's not.
Maybe we could create a course at UMBS for students enrolled in doing the case, so they can come up and take summer credit.
So two ideas. One is that Rebecca, for the sustainability case, so Rebecca does have a team, including a postdoc who's charged to help with assessment. That might be a request to relate to her about being Second, for the Bible Station project, one idea that we had written into the proposal and are thinking about implementing is that for new courses, CRLT has a process that we call midterm student feedback. We do about 400 of them a year with instructors, where it's like a very quick focus group. You ask the students, what's the strength of the course or the experience of learning, what are key suggestions? And so we had written in for new courses for the Bible Station proposal to get that quick feedback and able to make very responsive changes. But there's assessment ideas.
The case study can involve original research, or it can involve a creative summary of existing knowledge, like in the wolf study. I mean, they went out and surveyed people and did a bunch of summary, but they weren't going out and banding and marking wolves.
Yeah, no. So it can be prior research, or it can be a new case like you've been working on that each person. And that was like the two levels. You didn't get into it too much, but there's like two levels of funding. It's like if you're using like a previous case and just creating a podcast, it's like a lower amount of funding. Whereas if you're doing an original case, I think the funding is a little higher. So that would be a question to address with her. I'm not sure the exact levels, but there's levels.
How long was the video of the wolf?
So the video portions are not like there doesn't have to be video portion. The portion that there has to be is a podcast. So it's just an audio. I think so. Actually, the wolf case I think was quite long, like an hour and 10, and then they cut it down a little shorter for people to listen to quickly. So I don't know. I don't think there's exactly a time that it has to be, but I would say usually they're between like 30 minutes and an hour somewhere.
So I think it would be a good idea, and you could convey this to Rebecca and Arun, but and Rebecca as well, to come up, and I think we've already agreed to do this summer to the station to sort of talk with our teaching faculty and our researchers about how they might think about participating in proposing a case study at the station. Mercury is a wonderful place for the station. It's huge impact. I want to say we're going to have a break at 3:30. There's an opportunity for as we move on in the afternoon, there's more flexibility and freedom to do whatever we want. Some of us may be going to different groups. Some of us may want to pursue specific topics here. I don't know how much time Mary and Matt have here. I don't know whether you're going to be here beyond 3:30. Okay. So I want to make sure that Mike and Tim and Tom, any who have, or Pete or Todd, have a chance to sort of ask questions or make some suggestions before we break. I want to credit Mike, a lot, I didn't, and I should have. The structure for this really was informed a lot by CGIS structure, the sort of run the course in the academic year and then do a bookend somewhere else.
Right, and I was just going to say that if anyone does have ideas for implementing new courses for undergraduates, just reach out to us a call. We've run a lot of different models, and we'd be happy to talk to you about ways we could do that.
Tell us what CGIS stands for, because I'm really bad at acronyms.
So my
Center for Global.
moved here. Center for Global and Intercultural Study.
Right.
Military is so good with academics. Academics are so bad, except the important ones like SF.
Yeah.
Yes, I think all the 4 cases currently are public, so I'll have Rebecca send you the link. And if not public, then I'm sure that she can send you a link to something that you can see that is the pilot. So yeah, we'll definitely have. I'll just have to get email then.
It's a separate challenge to produce a product that you know is just going to be audio versus a product that's audio and video.
Yeah, so the that was, she didn't really touch on this too much either, but we have a team of people who are audio engineers and producers of this material. And so a lot of those edge notes are going to be from outside sources, not that the researcher or the team that's writing the case is creating. A lot of that stuff's going to be like articles that have been in the news about this, or videos from other people who have been talking about this issue. So you're not creating the edge notes, you're more a curator of edge notes, what's going on. But the only portion that you're going to have that would be created by the overseer would be the podcast portion where the students involved in the case. But we have people who will help you to create that and to put it up on the website and stuff. So it's not like you just say, okay, create a podcast. Like, we'll be there to help you. You just have to lock up the person who's going to be the decision maker in the case and what questions you're going to ask that person. So basically, you just having a conversation in front of a microphone that we're getting the audio for, and then we'll help you put it on the website as a separate portion of the case.
But there's an option for a video.
Yeah.
Or if not a video, just photographs.
Yeah.
That's really what I meant. It would be very hard to produce a 30-minute strictly audio about the wolf problem without showing any slides or any images of wolves or the distribution of the wolves. That's what I mean.
Yeah, so it's like, have you ever if you listen to the radio, it's just coming out of your speakers. You're not watching it. So it's the same. It's just it's just a little bar and you press play on it, and then you can do whatever you want, and it's playing at the same time. So.
What if you don't have rights to the photograph data sets?
Yeah, so we are actually working on it. However, what the edge notes are just links to other sources. So you don't actually need copyright to link to someone. Like, you're just saying, like, oh, check this piece out, and someone can click on it and go to that piece. So to say to someone, oh, go to this website, you don't need copyright to do that. Whereas if you're incorporating their pictures into your case, you need copyright. But we're getting that stuff figured out on our own. Yeah. And that would be part of curating the edge notes to make sure that things were accessible to the people who are going to be using the case that you are presenting.
Disappear.
Yeah, and that's part of it. And especially not only upkeep in that sense of links going bad, but also what's happening that's new in these cases. When new stuff is coming out, putting those into the edge notes and showing people these are what have happened since this case has been created. So it's going to be constant, that it would be a good source of information for a long period of time.
Great. Sounds exciting.
I think one of the other value adds here is by being able to engage graduate students. It sounds like we've got a postdoc involved, but that has to be part of our NSFs for postdoctoral training. We have to provide with these opportunities, but a lot of even our master's students are ending up in largely teaching positions at community colleges, and so to give them this opportunity to be involved in sort of curriculum assessment, very exciting.
Yeah, of the 4 cases, 2 are by the postdoc who is here, actually Katie. I don't know if you saw Rebecca pointed to it at the very beginning of the presentation, but she created 2 of the cases that are headed by Arun. And then Armand, who is a student at SNRE, a master's student, he's double master's between public policy and SNRE. He created one of the cases, and then there are 2 cases being created by 2 other master's students right now. So very, very student friendly.
So if we wanted to look at a case or hear a case, see one, how could we do that?
Yes, I'll have Rebecca send you guys a link to what to view a case. So I just have to get emails from you guys now.
So send it to Alicia, and she can send it to everybody.
Okay, all right.
And then you'll ask Elisa to send it to everyone that was here or everyone at the station.
Yeah, we'll make that generally available. So I think I mentioned this. I talked too much. I don't remember everything I said, but we will be hiring a postdoc that will link CRLT to the Biostation Third Century Initiative. Arun and Rebecca already have a postdoc. Is that right?
Well, so they have her right now, but she got into doctoral programs, so she's deciding if she's going to be here somewhere else.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there will be a person to make all this go, to really facilitate the assessments, to work with CRLT expertise into our project. And I'm sure our two postdocs on these two closely linked Third Century Initiative proposals will be talking constructively with one another.
It'd be a nice community to focus on.
Yeah. Postdocs need mentoring. Good point.
One last thought about this idea of bookending U of M experiences up at the station. And even though the U of M TCI is more focused for extant faculty and courses on campus, I would think that those faculty and courses are going to need in-place expertise. So there's going to be ready collaboration with people who have a long-term history and knowledge base of what this system looks like or might look like at the station in early spring or late summer, and how to help facilitate that. So at some point, if there could be even a website of resource people who might be involved in these CTI initiatives or courses.
Yeah. Good, thanks. Other perspectives or comments? Well, Harry, I want to thank you. You're functioning as a professional. You're an undergrad. If I were to get a multiple choice test to say, Harry Rice, undergrad, graduate student, professional, I would probably choose C. So thanks. And I'd like to thank, it's been great to get to know Mary. When we wrote the proposal, Mary came up to the station. And getting to know Matt. And hopefully they'll be up for at least sometime this summer so we can, especially once we get our administrator hired and postdoc, they'll able to come up to help move us forward. So thanks for coming. Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot. It's a 3:26, so we've actually ended this meeting 4 minutes early, but I will be happy to sit here and take some heat or.
Nice to meet you all.